So this video is going to focus on more of the level 3 objectives. Alright, the first thing that we're looking here at is a mitochondria. So you'll remember this as the organelle where the process of cellular respiration takes place in a eukaryotic organism. Okay, we know that only eukaryotes have organelles, and we know that mitochondria is an organelle. So you're only going to find mitochondria in eukaryotic organisms. Now you might ask, well, if an organism doesn't have mitochondria, for example, bacteria, how do they do the process of cell respiration? Well, they don't do it inside the mitochondria, but they do it in other places in the cell, most oftenly in either the cytoplasm or inside the cell membrane itself. So let's focus more on what this mitochondria is and the parts of it. So, the very outer section, or outer layer, would be the outer membrane. And then you're going to notice there is another layer. This is the inner membrane. And you're going to notice that there's all of these kind of squiggly folds. And all of those folds and squiggles, the folds are called cristae. Okay? The more cristae, the better off the organelle is. The more folds you have, the more surface area. And we keep learning that the more surface area you have, the more area there is for diffusion of materials. In this case, the more cellular respiration can occur, the more surface area there is. So the more folds you get, the better off we are. The last part to look at is kind of the space inside. So all this space in the very center is called the matrix. Yes, the matrix. Keanu Reeves would be very happy. So they're matrix. So that's the very, very inside section. And you're going to find out that the different phases of cell respiration will occur in the different parts of the mitochondria. So if you think back a couple units ago when we were learning about cell organelles, we learned that the mitochondria was responsible for producing energy for the cell. And now we kind of have a deeper understanding. And we know that the whole point is to make ATP, or usable energy for the cell. And that's why it's called the powerhouse of the cell. Okay. Alright, so let's take a look at this diagram here. So this section over here, this is the mitochondria, and outside is the cytosol. So I'm basically looking at the fluid inside the cell, and then we have the organelle. So we're still looking at inside a cell. This is the fluid inside the cell, and then we have the mitochondria. So if we were to break down the process of cellular respiration, it occurs in 3 phases. So the first phase is glycolysis. So what's happening here is I have a reactant, glucose, and it enters into the process of glycolysis. Now lysis means to break. So if I look at glyco, it's like that's part of the word glucose. So glycolysis literally means to break glucose down. So glucose is being attacked right away, and we get 2 molecules of ATP to come out of the reaction. Great. If we only had 2 ATP, we wouldn't be able to get enough stuff done. We need a lot more ATP to come out of this. So we break glycolysis down in half into something called pyruvates. So pyruvates, okay, is a product of glycolysis. And then what ends up happening is we then take the pyruvate, we do a couple more reactions, we get some carbon dioxide out as a product here, and the pyruvate gets changed to something called acetyl-CoA. Then acetyl-CoA becomes a reactant for the Krebs cycle. So the Krebs cycle is the second phase of cellular respiration. So here we have a few more reactions going on, and what ends up happening is we produce some more carbon dioxide. So we're adding to our carbon dioxide pool here, product. So that's coming out of the Krebs cycle, but we also get more ATP as a result. Now we're not done yet. We take some of the products from the Krebs cycle, so if I follow the arrows here, we get a few more products out, and it enters into the last phase, or the third phase, called the electron transport chain. So this is like the final portion of cellular respiration. Well, if I take a look at my arrows, I will notice that my oxygen that you are breathing in every single second is actually going to get used in the electron transport chain. So my oxygen goes into the electron transport chain, and here's where the oxygen then gets turned into water. So water is one of my waste products of cellular respiration. And there's one more major product. So if I follow another arrow out, I'm going to notice that I also get some ATP. I get the most production of ATP through the electron transport chain. They kind of did a nice job in this diagram where they made this star much bigger than the other two. They should have made it a lot bigger, but I'll take it. We get the most ATP production through the electron transport chain. So if I look at how many total ATP are made, we have 2 in glycolysis, we have 2 as a result at the end of the Krebs cycle, and then by the very end in eukaryotes we end up with a total of 36 overall ATP. So that would mean we have 32 made in the Krebs cycle. In prokaryotes, you can end up with a total of 38 ATP. So the last part to take a look at is where these 3 phases actually occur. So glycolysis, that's the easy one. Glycolysis is occurring actually outside of the mitochondria, and it's happening inside the cytoplasm, or the cytosol, which is the fluid. So the first part doesn't even happen inside the mitochondria. Now if we take a look at the Krebs cycle is happening in the very inside of the mitochondria, and that's happening inside the matrix. The last part, the electron transport chain, that is actually happening within the folds of the cristae. So that's actually happening within the inner membrane, or within the folds of the cristae. So remember, we talked about how the electron transport chain is making the most ATP. So the more folds and more surface area, the more inner membrane you can have, ultimately the more ATP you're going to get out.